Well, guess what? Brittney Griner, effing white girl, is racist as hell. Why's it got to be about white? Why's it got to be about white girl? If you have no racist bones in your body, it's just that effing girl. I got no problem you say that effing girl. But me personally, I'm tired of all that white boy or that white girl. I'm tired of it. And the WNBA says there's no place for racism. Well, there it is right there. But yet, no investigation. Here's Skip Bayless dropping some F-bombs, baby.
But it is completely possible that white girl was about Caitlin Clark's popularity, about her stature, about her impact on the entire league. It's very possible that Brittney Griner was blaming Caitlin Clark in the big picture for her fouling out, blaming referees in general for overprotecting the Fever because the league wants the Fever to win and the white girl to be MVP because the white girl sells tickets and detonates ratings. That resentment would be an extremely plausible reason for Brittney Griner in the heat of the sixth foul moment to sit down on the bench and go white girl.
And this incident has, of course, gone viral online, but also sparked up some other skeletons in Brittney's closet that she probably wants to stay hidden. She is black, she is gay, and she is a woman. However, I do have some serious questions about that last one, which, again, we are going to circle back to.
What the hell is going on with WNBA that they cannot handle all this attention that they're getting, as well as the hate and anger towards Caitlin Clark? Every time we play her, there's this commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. Turns out it's people, thousands of them, just sitting there watching on purpose. It's very disruptive. She says WNBA games used to be a chill, quiet place. You could bring your laptop and relax, maybe even get a little work done. But now it's like there's large gatherings of people watching us from the stands. Some of them are yelling crazy shit about what they're seeing, putting unfair pressure on us to score, like we're there for their entertainment. You are. The whole thing is toxic. I saw a guy with his daughter in the crowd, both of them yelling, couldn't hear what they were saying exactly, but it was either my performance or some light racism. But here's where I'm going with this. So the WNBA says they want to get paid more. They're saying this year they're going to make $1 billion. That's what they're saying, okay? For the first time ever. Now that Caitlin Clark is hurt for 2 weeks, did you see ticket prices? Insane.
WNBA's trash.
No,
Straight,
I'm not going to say that.
Okay, this is my opinion.
Okay.
This is my opinion.
Okay.
It's a zombie company. It loses money. Nobody's going to the game. Thank God they get Caitlin Clark. She's injured for 2 weeks. All of a sudden, attendance goes down. This is not going to work long term. You trust me. You'll see this long term. Ain't nobody going to WNBA games. Vinny, who won the championship last year? You don't even know.
When it comes to Caitlin Clark, now I've taken hits because I was calling it from day one. You got people that are resentful towards her. But it's really not about her, guys. It's about what she represents. Before she ever came along, there were a lot of outstanding basketball players who happened to be black females that was doing their thing on the WNBA level. And they never got this kind of shine. This girl, the Golden Goose, comes along and she wreaks havoc. She's the Rookie of the Year. She's fourth in the league in MVP voting. Fourth in the league, her rookie year.
Wow.
Outstanding. She's like Steph Curry. She could pull up from anywhere. You understand? She has that kind of capability. Didn't win a national championship. Lost to LSU one year. Lost to South Carolina another year. But she's outstanding and clearly worthy of being the #1 overall pick.
If we're going to stomp out racism, then let's stomp out racism. That's what it's about. And Brittney Griner and all these other clowns are jealous as hell that the little white girl's kicking their ass.
But regardless of why Brittney Griner said what she said or at whom she said it, I want to know, is the WNBA okay with one of its players saying white girl on the bench and getting caught by TV cameras saying such? I guess they are. I guess they're okay with it. Obviously, the league would very much not be okay with a white player saying black girl on the bench in anger and getting caught by TV cameras. That would be an immediate suspension, if not a career ender for said white girl.
Again, you have to take these things for a grain of salt, right? Again, allegedly. We're speaking allegedly here, guys. And this post got 2.3 million views and states that this is the truth about Brittney. Brittney is a weird case. He's a man, yes, that much is obvious, but not in the way that you think. He isn't trans. He's a straight cis male who was raised as a girl and given a girl's name by his parents. His mother is the insane one. She forced him to live as a female right up through high school, filled out all of his paperwork, including BC as female, and kept the charade going. He played on girls' sports teams because his papers said he was a girl. He had to keep pretending in college, stay in women's teams, and now he just has to keep barely pretending to stay in the WNBA. But in all other ways, he lives life as a man. He wears men's clothes, dates and married a woman, has masculine features, and takes masculine roles. If not for his mother's insanity, he would be a mediocre male player in the NBA. And honestly, that may even be a little bit generous in this context.
The women have a league. As far as I understand, it's mostly women without penises, but I leave that to you to figure it. Well, it's actually a little unclear because this Brittney Griner, a lot of people think she's a dude, but in any event, Brittney Griner is a black basketball player who some people think is a man. I don't know. I guess she's a woman. Let's just say she's a woman. Here's a chick, a black chick. Brittney Griner's a fine player, I suppose. We'll get to that in a minute.
In a way, I feel sorry for him because all of his success depends on him maintaining the lie he's lived with for his whole life. Of course, Russia gives zero shits and will treat him as the male he is. Maybe it'll be a refreshing change from him. And this is with, of course, reference to the fact that there was some speculation that Brittney Griner was actually put in a male prison. Very difficult to find any reports that actually confirmed that, but that was widespread speculation at the time.
The girl is spectacular. It's not like she's not a scrub. She's not only can play, she's a star caliber player who draws this attention. And maybe it's because that fan base that she has and her being a young white lady contributes to it. So what? Benefit from it. And then you have a lot of folks that have come to the defense of numerous WNBA players because they were pointing out like this has been going on before long and people are not hating on her. It's not about hating on her. It's that you feel she is getting a level of attention that you deserved and you warranted long before she ever came along.
Let me read you the ticket prices. After Caitlin Clark's been hurt for 2 weeks, Caitlin Clark absence is having an immediate impact beyond the court. According to data shared by Yahoo Sports via TickPick, prices for 2 specific Indiana Fever away games against the Chicago Sky and the Washington Mystics dropped sharply after Clark was sidelined. Before the injury, the lowest ticket available for Fever's matchup in Chicago was $86. For the game in Washington, fans needed at least $41 to get in. After the news of Clark's absence, those get-in prices fell to $25 from $86 and $14 from $41. What the hell is going on with WNBA that they cannot handle all this attention that they're getting, as well as the hate and anger towards Caitlin Clark?
The WNBA isn't new to controversy, but this time, it's different. This isn't just another debate about prize money or media coverage. It's not a conversation about scheduling conflicts or slow growth. This time, it's a cultural firestorm that has pulled everyone, players, fans, executives, even political commentators, into the center of the heat. And right at the heart of it, Brittney Griner. Yes, again. Once viewed as a symbol of athletic excellence, advocacy, and personal resilience, Griner is now at the center of the WNBA's most explosive crisis in recent memory. But this isn't about what she did on the court. It's about what she was caught saying as she walked off it. It all started with a clip, just a few seconds of grainy sideline footage captured during a game between the Phoenix Mercury and the Indiana Fever. The kind of video that usually fades into obscurity. But not this time. Not with Brittney Griner, not with Caitlin Clark on the other end of it. The clip shows Griner walking off the court after fouling out. She's clearly frustrated. Her lips move. There's no microphone, but lip readers and thousands of fans claim they know exactly what she said. Trash fucking white girl. Aimed directly at Caitlin Clark, the league's most talked about rookie and rising star. Within hours, that short clip went viral. People slowed it down, zoomed in, and debated every frame. Was it really directed at Clark? Was it just frustration at a ref? Was it something else entirely? The opinions were split, but the outrage was universal. And what followed wasn't just a conversation, it was a full-blown reckoning. For days, the WNBA said nothing. No press release, no fines, no suspensions, not even a vague tweet. The silence became louder than any statement they could have made. And that silence lit a fire online that the league was completely unprepared to contain. Fans pointed out the obvious. If Caitlin Clark had said "trash black girl" on camera, the league would have come down hard. A suspension, a press tour, sponsors cutting ties, the media hammering her every move. But this time, nothing. And people noticed. The pressure built fast. Social media erupted. Analysts dissected the clip. Commentators demanded action. Even influencers who rarely talk sports were weighing in. And through it all, Brittney Griner said nothing. No denial, no apology, no clarification. Finally, after nearly a week of mounting backlash, an internal memo leaked to the media. According to multiple sources, the WNBA had reached a decision. Brittney Griner was banned, not suspended. Banned for the rest of the season. They stopped short of calling it a lifetime ban, but the tone of their internal communications made it clear Griner was done for the year. Her return to the league? Uncertain. Possibly dependent on public opinion, possibly on whether the league could recover. The news hit hard. This wasn't just a punishment. It was a statement. One of the league's most recognizable faces had been removed from the game by the very organization that once held her up as a global ambassador for justice, equality, and resilience. This was the same Brittney Griner who became an international figure after being detained overseas. The same athlete whose release involved diplomatic negotiations and a prisoner swap. And now she was benched, not by a foreign government, but by her own league. Naturally, opinions were divided. Some fans said it was about time, that Griner had carried herself with too much arrogance for too long, that she crossed a line. Others claimed it was a smear job, that she was being targeted, that lip reading wasn't concrete enough to destroy someone's career. Still, what couldn't be denied was that the incident had forced the WNBA into a moment of reckoning. Because this wasn't just about a slur, it was about the standards the league claims to uphold, the values they print on t-shirts, the speeches they give at All-Star Weekend, the promises they make to fans and players alike. And right in the middle of all this, Caitlin Clark, the rookie. The phenomenon, the unexpected center of a conversation she never signed up for. She hadn't said much publicly. Her camp, according to sources, was staying measured and neutral. No demands, no threats, just a quiet request. Apply the league's rules evenly. Inside the Indiana Fever locker room, the mood had shifted. Tensions were high. Clark had quickly become the face of the league, whether she wanted to or not. Some of her teammates supported her rise. Others felt the attention was overshadowing their own work. And after the Griner incident, that spotlight got even brighter. Clark didn't ask for this. She came to play basketball. She didn't step into the league looking to carry a political weight or to represent anything beyond her love of the game. But from the moment she took the court, the attention and the responsibility followed her.
This is why the WNBA is never, ever, ever going to work and never make money. And this is exactly what Caitlin Clark gets for bending the knee. Do you guys remember when she said, when we lost all respect for her, when she said, I want to say I've earned every single thing, but as a white person, there is privilege. And the more we can elevate black women, this is going to be a beautiful thing. That's when it was all over. And Angel Reese and Brittney Griner, they walk around like the league owes them something. Even Ryan Clark's attitude as if, bro, where's the victimhood? These are freaking millionaires. Like, what are you talking about? It's attitude, it's no humility, just entitlement, and that's not confidence, it's arrogance with receipts. Okay? If you want fans, if you want your league to grow, act like a professional. Okay?
Reporters wanted statements, fans wanted reactions, teammates wanted leadership. And yet, Clark kept her head down. She focused on the game. But her silence, like Griner's, began to take on its own meaning. Except Clark's silence was seen as poised, while Griner's was perceived as evasive. That contrast fueled even more debate. Some wanted Clark to denounce Griner publicly. Others praised her for staying composed. But no matter what she said, or didn't say, people had already made up their minds. She had become a symbol, and that symbol came with pressure. Meanwhile, inside the league's front office, panic was setting in. Sponsors were calling, PR teams were scrambling, executives were split. Some believed Griner had to be punished to preserve the league's credibility. Others feared the backlash from a loyal player base that had long supported her. But the choice had been made. The ban was real. The WNBA had officially drawn a line in the sand. Now the question was, how would they survive the fallout? Because in this new era of sports, one clip can rewrite everything. Screenshots don't fade, videos don't disappear, and silence doesn't protect you. It defines you. Brittney Griner had once been the WNBA's most visible voice. Now, her absence was louder than any statement. Caitlin Clark had once just been a rookie. Now, she was the most closely watched figure in the sport. And the league? It was stuck in the middle, trying to convince everyone, fans, sponsors, and players, that it hadn't just lost control of its image, but maybe, just maybe, its soul. Inside WNBA headquarters, things were unraveling fast. Even after the announcement of Brittney Griner's season-long ban, the fallout hadn't stopped. In fact, it only seemed to grow worse by the hour. Fans weren't satisfied with the vague internal memos or the lack of a press conference. Sponsors were calling for clarity, reporters wanted a face on camera, and perhaps most notably, Brittney Griner herself had yet to say a single word. The WNBA had broken its silence with the ban, but the silence from Griner's side made the situation feel even more unstable. What began as an on-court outburst had turned into a full-on PR crisis, and the league was doing damage control behind closed doors. But no amount of internal meetings or late-night strategy calls could fix what had already exploded online. The footage that sparked it all, a sideline moment captured in low resolution, continued to dominate social media. At first, it was about what Griner allegedly said, but now the conversation was shifting. It wasn't just the slur anymore, it was everything that surrounded it. And in the absence of any public response, the online world did what it always does. It filled the silence with noise. Someone unearthed an old video clip from Griner's Instagram account. It appeared to show her shirtless, laughing with friends. Harmless on its own, but the internet rarely stops at face value. The fact that the clip had reportedly stayed up for over 100 weeks without being flagged by Instagram raised new questions. Questions about identity, about policies, about who Griner really was, and what she might be hiding. In a matter of hours, online forums, social media threads, and TikTok breakdowns were flooding with one central theory. Brittney Griner wasn't biologically female. Of course, nothing in the official record confirmed this. But the nature of internet virality doesn't require confirmation, just curiosity and momentum. That old clip became the centerpiece of a growing conspiracy, one that pulled in past interviews, press photos, and even grainy high school yearbook images. People started comparing Griner's voice to past audio recordings. They analyzed her posture, her muscle tone, even her fashion choices. The microscope turned invasive. Then came the allegations. According to one particularly viral thread, Griner's birth certificate had allegedly been altered. The story went that her mother had always wanted a daughter and, upon giving birth to a biological male, simply listed her child as female on paper. From there, the theory claimed Griner was raised, trained, and entered women's sports based on that classification, and the rest, as they say, was history. Wild? Absolutely. But the lack of any denial only made things worse. Fans who had previously defended Griner now found themselves conflicted. Others, more critical from the beginning, felt emboldened. And Clark's fan base? Many of them saw this as part of a larger pattern. They began reposting old clips of Clark being fouled hard, getting dismissed in interviews, and now, allegedly, targeted with a slur and possibly more.
Griner voiced frustration in a recent interview, claiming that Caitlin Clark is ruining what used to make the WNBA great. Wait for this.
Empty stands?
Tom, let me just...
Go ahead, I'm so mad.
WNBA games used to be a chill, quiet place. You could bring your laptop and relax, maybe even get a little work done. But now, it's like there's a large gathering of people watching us from the stands. Some of them are yelling crazy shit about what they're seeing, putting unfair pressure on us to score like we're there for their entertainment. And that's pretty gross.
Well,
Are you
I act like this.
Okay,
Rob, can you verify that this is what she said on the mom and pop WNBA model? That she's sick of the and then she says, the whole thing is toxic. I saw a guy with his daughter in the crowd, both of them yelling, couldn't hear what they were saying exactly, but it was either about my performance or some light racism. Definitely one of the two. Give me a flipping break.
Can I say?
The narrative shifted from a one-off incident to something systemic. To Clark's supporters, it was no longer just about Griner's frustration. It was about a league that had, in their view, allowed Clark to be mistreated while shielding those doing the damage. Suddenly, protecting Clark became a rallying cry, and demanding accountability became a movement. Meanwhile, inside the WNBA's executive suite, panic was brewing. Sources close to the league described an atmosphere of disarray. PR teams were scrambling to craft neutral responses, unsure of whether to stand firm on the ban or attempt to soften the narrative. Some officials wanted to wait it out, hope the story faded. Others saw the writing on the wall. This wasn't going away. Not without answers. To make matters worse, every new silence from Griner felt like a decision, a choice not to speak, a refusal to clarify. And that silence created a vacuum that got louder with every passing day. Some assumed she was working on legal options. Others speculated she had been advised not to speak due to the potential for lawsuits. But for the public, the silence was deafening. And it wasn't just casual fans paying attention. Major sponsors began asking tough questions. Corporate partners didn't want to be associated with scandal. Some considered pulling support. Others demanded behind-the-scenes explanations that the league couldn't comfortably provide. Every angle of the controversy began touching larger debates about gender identity in sports, fairness, verification, and the league's credibility. What had started as a few seconds of footage had now grown into a full-on existential crisis. And Caitlin Clark? She remained focused on the game. But her image was everywhere. Even when she didn't speak, people filled in the blanks. Her facial expressions during games were picked apart. Her interviews were analyzed for coded meaning. And while she stayed above the noise, it only added to the narrative that she was composed, mature, and targeted by forces larger than herself. Players around the league began to take sides, some privately, others more vocally. One anonymous veteran told a reporter, "This never would have gone this far if it wasn't Caitlin Clark involved." Another posted a vague Instagram story referencing betrayal and media bias, which fans quickly tied back to the Griner situation. The locker rooms weren't just divided, they were boiling. Behind closed doors, some athletes expressed support for Griner. They felt she was being unfairly targeted, that the slur, if real, was nothing worse than what had been said in countless games before. Others believed the ban was justified, but felt the league should have done more to control the narrative instead of letting social media define it. And hovering over it all was a question the league couldn't escape. Is the WNBA truly ready for the spotlight it's been chasing? Because this wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about identity, rules, media spin, and the cost of fame. It was about whether leagues can enforce values without showing favoritism, whether stars are held accountable the same way rookies are, and whether an entire system can be trusted when it takes public outcry, not policy, to take action. Brittney Griner remained out of the picture, her team refusing interviews. Caitlin Clark continued putting up stats, drawing massive crowds. But the sport itself, it felt like it was reaching a breaking point. The WNBA had long dreamed of this moment, the headlines, the national interest, the viral content, but it didn't look like what they expected. It came with tension, with scrutiny, with a spotlight that couldn't be turned off. And as rumors continued to swirl, statements remained drafted but unpublished, and footage continued to resurface, the league found itself walking a razor's edge. What comes next is anyone's guess, but one thing is certain, this isn't over, not by a long shot. Just when it seemed like the controversy had reached its peak, the internet did what it always does. It dug deeper. And this time, what it found wasn't just shocking, it was personal. The clip of Brittney Griner allegedly muttering a racial slur had opened the floodgates, but what followed next turned an already explosive situation into something no one was ready for. Within days of the clip going viral, users on Reddit, TikTok, and X began resurfacing old footage. Some of it was from Griner's early WNBA days. Some of it came from her own social media. But the one that caught everyone's attention? A blurry, off-the-court video that appeared to show Griner shirtless, laughing, relaxed, and surrounded by friends. The video, allegedly from her Instagram stories years ago, wasn't graphic, but it raised a question that spread faster than any press release. Why hadn't Instagram flagged it? Why wasn't it removed for nudity? After all, other athletes had faced account takedowns for far less.
And think about it, Brittney Griner talking all that trash. We traded the merchant of death for your ass, and you're out there talking shit and saying racist shit on the freaking sideline, and it's disgusting. Okay, that's why nobody watches it, and it'll
they're
lose
watching
money.
it. No. The point is, Vinny, if Caitlin Clark goes and is playing, they're watching it. Guess what was just announced yesterday?
What?
Caitlin Clark's
She's injured.
She'll be out for 2 weeks.
Good.
Let's see what happens to viewership.
Good.
Let's see what happens to viewership.
But do you think?
And that question led to a firestorm. Internet detectives, self-declared experts, and thousands of conspiracy theorists started asking if Griner had been hiding something all along. One theory in particular caught fire and refused to die. The claim? That Brittney Griner was born male, raised female, and had competed in women's sports her entire life under a false identity. To be clear, there is no evidence, no credible report, no document that confirms any of this. But in the digital age, evidence isn't required to go viral. All you need is a theory, a clip, and a crowd ready to believe it. Soon, TikTok was flooded with side-by-side comparisons of Griner's physique, her voice, her mannerisms. Some users zoomed in on her jawline, others played slowed-down audio clips to prove her tone was suspicious. Even high school photos were posted and picked apart. The goal? To prove that she was not who she claimed to be. It didn't matter that these were all fragments, incomplete, misleading. The narrative had already taken root, and as it grew, so did the silence. Brittney Griner still hadn't spoken. Not about the alleged slur, not about the ban, not about the rumors now swallowing her identity whole. And that silence, strategic or not, began speaking louder than any denial ever could. Suddenly, this wasn't just about sports. It was about trust, about gender politics, about identity, fairness, and the fragile credibility of the WNBA. The league had spent years building its image around inclusion, representation, and progress. And now, that same image was being questioned from every angle. Theories got darker. One post claimed that Griner's mother had falsified her birth certificate at the hospital. Another insisted that foreign prison records classified her as male during her detainment overseas. Even more claimed that U.S. officials had quietly altered public records after her release. Again, no proof. But in the internet era, doubt spreads faster than truth. As these claims gained momentum, fans started to demand more than just an apology. They wanted an investigation, not just into the slur, but into Griner's eligibility to play in the WNBA at all. They wanted medical records, birth certificates, answers. That demand put the league in an impossible position. If they responded, they risked legitimizing conspiracy. If they stayed quiet, they looked complicit. And so, they did what most institutions do under pressure. They stalled. Behind closed doors, panic was setting in. League executives were meeting with attorneys, PR experts, and team owners to figure out next steps. Some wanted to issue a hard denial and move on. Others warned that any public comment would pour gasoline on the fire. The real fear? That this wouldn't stop with Griner, that other players would be targeted next, that the league's very foundation could be shaken by a narrative that, while unfounded, had become too big to ignore. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark continued to play. Game after game, she delivered standout performances. She smiled for the cameras, answered questions politely, and tried her best to keep the spotlight where it belonged, on basketball. But even she couldn't avoid the tidal wave of drama pulling her in. Her fans were mobilizing, defending her online, painting her as the new face of the league, while accusing veterans like Griner of being threatened by her success. Commentators echoed the sentiment, saying the league had failed to protect its brightest star, that she had been thrown into the middle of a cultural war without warning. And while Clark herself remained composed, her silence was beginning to be interpreted too. Some said she was showing maturity, others accused her of avoiding the tough questions. But no matter what side you were on, it was clear. Clark wasn't just a player anymore. She was a symbol. As the online chaos grew, the WNBA finally released a second official statement. It didn't name names, it didn't address any rumors directly, but it emphasized the league's commitment to respect, integrity, and equitable participation for all athletes. It was vague, measured, safe, and for many, it wasn't enough. Because by now, this was no longer about one comment. It was about identity, about silence, about how a league that prided itself on boldness suddenly felt afraid to take a stand. The real question being whispered in boardrooms, locker rooms, and behind-the-scenes group chats wasn't just what did Griner say, but who gets to belong here? And when the league answers that question with silence, Or worse, with vague PR speak, it loses trust. Fast. Sponsors began pulling back. Networks started shifting camera time. And fans, especially new ones brought in by Clark's popularity, were beginning to question what kind of league they had just stepped into.
Brittney Griner cusses Caitlin Clark, uses profanity, is jealous to play, attacks Caitlin Clark. And let me explain what's happening. You are seeing a lot of very, very racist women, right? These are racist women who were taught that they were God's gift to women's basketball, that they are black, and because of that, they are better than white people at sports. That's the one area that they can succeed over white people in sports, right? And this is their league, right? Then you got a young, the stereotypical white girl, pretty, skinny, is better than it comes into the sport and becomes the Michael Jordan, LeBron James of the sport. The face gets more publicity on one than they've ever got in some of their playoff, any of their games ever. Brings more money. They are extremely jealous and won't say it. They want to make it like it's typical basketball. But no, they have made it very clear. Angel Reese, the Brittney Griners, that nobody cared about their league before she came, and that hurts them.
Was this really the inclusive, empowering space they had been sold? Or was it an old guard protecting itself behind slogans? That tension kept growing. Players held private meetings, coaches whispered concerns, some teams considered issuing their own statements, but were advised against it. Everyone was watching, waiting for someone to take control of the narrative, but no one did. And so, the story lived on. Online, fans were now treating every game like an episode of a larger drama. Every foul, every handshake, every sideline glance became evidence. The games themselves became secondary. The narrative had taken over. And in the middle of it all, Griner, still banned, still silent. Clark, still rising, still silent. And the league, holding its breath, knowing that the longer it waits, the more damage it might be doing. Because when a league built on values is challenged at its core, the worst thing it can do is nothing. By the time the WNBA issued its second vague statement, it was already too late. The media had taken control of the story, and they weren't interested in waiting for the league to catch up. What started as a controversial sideline comment had now snowballed into a national scandal, and the league looked powerless to stop it. Mainstream outlets that usually ignored women's sports suddenly had something to say. News anchors who couldn't name 3 WNBA players were now talking about Brittney Griner and Caitlin Clark like they were at the center of a political war. Right-wing commentators used the situation as fuel for culture war narratives. Left-leaning commentators tiptoed around it, unsure of what to say. And that silence from the league's usual defenders, that was starting to speak volumes too. The headlines weren't just about basketball anymore, they were about trust, transparency, identity, and hypocrisy. The league had built its brand on inclusivity and fairness, but now critics were asking the tough question, fairness for who? At the same time, social media descended further into chaos. Hashtags exploded, memes spread like wildfire, and every new thread seemed to spark another round of rumors. The original slur was no longer the centerpiece, it was now just the spark that lit the match. What took center stage instead were the identity conspiracies and the accusation that the WNBA had knowingly protected a player who, according to online rumor, may not have met eligibility requirements in the first place. Again, no proof had been offered. But proof didn't matter anymore. What mattered was perception, and public trust was rapidly eroding. Behind closed doors, the league's leadership knew they were in trouble. Meetings that were supposed to be about sponsorship growth and expanding international coverage were now emergency strategy sessions. Executives debated whether to release more detailed clarifications. Some wanted to issue a hard denial and call out the conspiracy theorists directly. Others warned that doing so would only amplify the controversy. There was no winning move left, just damage control. Meanwhile, Brittney Griner remained out of the spotlight. No press statement, no social media activity, no interviews. Every hour that passed without a word from her only added to the fire. Some interpreted her silence as guilt. Others said she was just protecting herself against a media circus that would twist her every word. And then there was Caitlin Clark. While the internet exploded around her, Clark stayed locked in on basketball. Her game was improving, her team was rising, and her fan base bigger than ever. But she couldn't avoid the pressure either. The questions at press conferences became sharper, the headlines became more aggressive, and even when she didn't speak, people read meaning into every glance, every reaction, every pause. To her credit, Clark never cracked, but it was clear to everyone around her that she had been pulled into something much bigger than herself. She wasn't just a basketball player anymore, she had become the face of a much deeper battle, one she never asked to fight. Her supporters framed her as the embodiment of everything the league needed: discipline, skill, marketability, humility. But others criticized that framing, saying the league was trying too hard to center her while failing to support the women who built the foundation she now stood on. It was a classic generational clash, the rising face of the league versus the legacy that came before. Players in locker rooms across the league were talking. Some defended Griner passionately, saying the backlash was unfair, driven by racism and bias. Others said she had crossed a line, both with her alleged comment and her refusal to address it afterward. The league was now fractured. Trust between players, fans, and leadership was breaking down. And worst of all, there was still no clear end in sight, because every day brought a new layer.
Ticky-tack fouls, and again, Caitlin Clark doing a little bit of an acting job.
What has happened to her in the last 2 years since graduating college is that she has been abused repeatedly. We have shown you videos just getting elbowed, getting crushed, inbound passes where they ram into her, just absolutely abused, and there clearly is a racial element to it. Here is Brittney Griner elbowing Caitlin Clark in a crazy way and then calling her a trash white girl.
Not sure if that was actually a foul, but again, that's for the ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier today.
All right, so she wants to be seen. She knows the cameras are on her. Trash white girl. She wants to be seen saying that. Now imagine if Caitlin Clark had said trash freaking black girl. Like, what would be happening right now? Also, the way she sets the pick, some people are cheap and whatever. You don't set a pick and just throw an elbow up like that. That is not what you do. But okay, fine. Caitlin might have acted there a little bit, but she's just getting abused. Now,
people were demanding a full investigation, not just into the alleged slur, but into Griner's entire career. If the identity rumors were false, they said, prove it. If they were true, why did it take a viral clip for anyone to speak up? In the middle of all this, the WNBA's attempt to launch its Fair Play initiative fell completely flat. The campaign, meant to promote sportsmanship and unity, was immediately dragged online. People accused the league of trying to paper over real problems with feel-good slogans. And honestly, they weren't wrong, because the damage had already been done. What started as a small incident had grown into a full-blown identity crisis for the league, its players, and its public image. The fans who came in because of Clark were getting a crash course in the league's long-standing internal tensions. The fans who had supported Griner through thick and thin were now unsure what to believe. And the casual observers? They were watching the league tear itself apart in real time. All the while, the story continued evolving. Influencers were now doing deep dives into Griner's career. YouTube was flooded with expose-style content. TikTok creators were dramatizing every angle. Even former athletes began weighing in, some cautiously supportive, others clearly frustrated by what they saw as a lack of accountability. And as for the league, it was losing the battle for narrative control. Rapidly, because when a scandal this big hits, you can't wait a week to speak. You can't hide behind vague statements and hope it dies down. You have to lead, or you get run over by the story. Right now, the WNBA was getting run over, and everyone could see it. The Griner situation had turned from an isolated moment into a symbol of something much bigger, something the league wasn't prepared to confront publicly, even though it had been building for years. The question now wasn't just about Griner. It wasn't just about Clark. It wasn't even about fairness anymore. It was about what kind of league the WNBA wanted to be. Transparent or protective, bold or bureaucratic, honest or carefully staged. Whatever the answer was, fans were no longer willing to wait. As the controversy continued spiraling out of control, the league's silence began turning into something even more dangerous: resentment. Not just from fans, not just from media, but from the players themselves. In locker rooms across the country, the mood was shifting. Team meetings that usually centered on play strategy were now hijacked by whispered conversations about the Griner situation. Veteran players wanted answers, rookies wanted reassurance, and no one was getting either. Several players reportedly reached out to the WNBA Players Association behind closed doors, demanding clarification on where the league stood. Some weren't even taking sides. They just wanted leadership, a voice, something concrete, anything that proved someone at the top had control. But what they got instead was another week of silence. The rumors, meanwhile, kept evolving. Internet detectives claimed to have uncovered documents tied to Griner's international detainment, suggesting, without confirmation, that she had been processed as male in a Russian facility. Others pointed to the absence of any medical record correction or public denial as supposed proof that the league was covering up a scandal that extended back to her entry into professional sports. It wasn't just toxic, it was radioactive. And yet, the WNBA continued hoping the wave would pass, that the public would forget, that fans would get bored. But that didn't happen. In fact, the opposite did. With every day that passed, the pressure mounted. Caitlin Clark, meanwhile, tried to stay insulated from the noise, but she wasn't immune. Her name was now attached to headlines she had no part in writing. Every game she played was viewed through a different lens. Every time she walked onto the court, someone in the crowd was waiting to catch her reaction to the scandal. Even her body language became content. To her credit, Clark never took the bait, but it was obvious to anyone paying attention. She was under immense pressure, and the league's inability to shield its newest star was starting to show. What made things worse was that fans weren't just arguing about facts anymore. They were arguing about identity, fairness, and what kind of sport women's basketball was turning into. Some insisted the league had created this disaster by refusing to treat all players equally. Others argued that this was the inevitable price of rapid growth and mainstream visibility. And through it all, the one person who could have stopped the bleeding, Brittney Griner, remained silent. By this point, the league wasn't just facing a media nightmare, it was facing a cultural fracture. Sponsors began requesting to pause partnerships. Some wanted to renegotiate visibility clauses.
That Brittney Griner was blaming Caitlin Clark in the big picture for her fouling out, blaming referees in general for overprotecting the Fever because the league wants the Fever to win, white girl to be MVP because the white girl sells tickets and detonates ratings. That resentment would be an extremely plausible reason for Brittney Griner in the heat of the sixth foul moment to sit down on the bench and go white girl.
So there's this other girl in the WNBA. Her name's Angel Reese. And if Caitlin Clark...
Others were outright considering pulling their names off team jerseys. TV networks began preparing backup coverage options in case WNBA ratings dipped even further under the weight of the scandal. Not because of the basketball, but because of the uncertainty. Nobody wanted to invest in a product that might blow up without warning. And behind the scenes, something else was brewing, a leak. Word started circulating that a private team call involving multiple players had been recorded, and that during the call, several high-profile veterans had openly criticized the league's handling of the Griner situation. One voice in particular stood out. An unnamed player from a major market team reportedly said, "If this had been someone else, anyone without Brittney's history and political ties, they would have been dragged out of this league, fast. But because it's her, everyone's afraid to move." The call, though not officially confirmed, became its own story. Clips from the alleged recording started appearing online. Fan accounts began transcribing it. One section, real or not, went viral, a supposed quote from a veteran player saying, "We protected her when she needed us. Where is she now that we need her to speak?" That line hit hard, because whether the recording was authentic or not, it captured the emotional state of the league. People felt abandoned, left out, trapped in a narrative they couldn't escape, and a leadership team that refused to lead. And then came the media storm. Several talk shows, ones that previously gave little attention to women's basketball, suddenly dedicated full segments to the controversy. One network panel compared the WNBA's situation to scandals in the NFL and NBA, asking whether the league was equipped to handle major PR crises. Another show asked the unthinkable: what if this controversy permanently damages the league's growth? The stakes were now existential. The question wasn't just about whether Griner would play again, it was about whether the WNBA could survive this moment without losing its core. Because this wasn't just an isolated scandal anymore. It had become a case study in everything the public feared about modern institutions: favoritism, identity politics, selective accountability, and performative leadership. And Clark? She was being forced to carry the weight of the league's future on her shoulders, without asking for it. Even her supporters, while passionate, couldn't protect her from the pressure. Every time she chose to stay quiet, people filled in the blanks. Every time she offered a neutral answer, it was spun as strategic silence. She had no space left to just be an athlete. And that's when the conversation shifted once again. From outrage to exhaustion, fans began expressing fatigue. Not because they didn't care, but because they felt like they were shouting into a void. People who wanted real answers were getting generic statements. People who supported Griner were being lumped in with conspiracy theorists. People who supported Clark were being accused of dog whistle politics. Everyone felt misunderstood. And the league? It had no answers. Executives refused interviews. Coaches were advised not to comment. Even former players who had once been vocal on social justice matters were eerily quiet. It was like the entire WNBA machine had decided to shut down until the storm passed. But that storm wasn't passing. It was growing stronger. And with every moment of silence, the league's credibility slipped further away. At this point, the only question left was whether someone, anyone, was going to step up and tell the truth. Not just about what was said, not just about what was real and what wasn't, but about what the league stood for when it mattered most. Because silence doesn't protect you forever. Eventually, it becomes your answer. The WNBA had run out of time. After weeks of silence, deflection, and behind-the-scenes chaos, the league finally released its long-awaited public statement. Not a leak, not an internal memo, not a league source, a real, official, signed-on-paper declaration to the public. But by then, the damage had already been done. The statement was a carefully written 3-page press release. It acknowledged the controversy without directly naming Brittney Griner. It reiterated the league's values: respect, integrity, inclusivity. It promised restorative justice opportunities and internal reviews for future conflict resolution. What it didn't do was offer clarity. It didn't answer whether Griner would be eligible to return. It didn't deny the identity rumors. It didn't explain the delay in action or why the WNBA's most publicized player had disappeared from all official communications.
Is the Michael Jordan of this thing. She's up there. I don't know what you want to consider. I don't want to compare her to an NBA player because she's kind of an unpleasant person, and she does strike me as racist and dirty. So she's just up there. She happens to be black. Again, I don't care, but she seems like a dirty player. Or anyway, here's Fox's Kevin Corke saying that nobody is going to watch the WNBA if they don't get rid of this racist nonsense.
They've taken it too far. I think Reese really has enmity toward this person, and I don't understand why. I think Caitlin Clark has been great for the sport. And if they keep this up, Joey, here's what's going to happen. Players like Reese don't understand. You are killing the game. But if you keep taking shots, nobody's going to want to watch that product, and that's the real danger.
It was, in essence, a document built to say everything and nothing at the same time. And the fans knew it. Social media lit up immediately. 3 pages to say, "We're scared," one post read. "Not even naming names? Cowardly," another said. Some applauded the use of words like accountability and restorative, but most called it what it felt like, a cleanup attempt months too late. Brittney Griner, once the WNBA's proudest representative, was no longer just suspended. She was effectively erased. No interviews, no apology, no final word. And that silence, still uninterrupted, became the final nail in her public perception. The legacy she built through championships, activism, and international headlines was now buried beneath a pile of unanswered questions. And while some still defended her fiercely, others had quietly moved on, unwilling to risk their own reputations defending a figure who refused to defend herself. As for Caitlin Clark, her story was only just beginning. The scandal had thrust her into the public eye faster than anyone could have anticipated. But even under pressure, she played every game. She met every media request. She kept her head down and her shots accurate. And in doing so, she earned not just numbers, but respect. Clark had entered the league as a star rookie. She was now its reluctant leader. The moment she stepped onto the court after the ban was finalized, the cameras zoomed in like never before. Not to catch a quote, not to start a rumor, but to watch history happen in real time. Her movements were sharper, her energy was different, and the crowd, louder than ever. Because in the wake of all the drama, something unexpected happened. Fans began to rally, around her, around the game, around the idea that maybe the WNBA could still grow, still evolve, still rebuild, if it was willing to learn. Inside the league offices, a different type of reckoning was underway. Several team owners reportedly demanded a full audit of how the Griner situation had been handled from day one. Others asked for the formation of a crisis communication task force, something the WNBA had never needed before. And in quiet conversations, some league officials began floating the possibility of restructuring leadership altogether. Not just because of one controversy, but because of everything that came with it. The identity questions, the media meltdown, the lost sponsors, the fractured locker rooms, the inconsistent rules, the loss of control. Because the truth is, this wasn't just about what Brittney Griner said or didn't say. It was about a league that had been walking on a tightrope for years, trying to balance progress with tradition, image with authenticity, politics with sport. And the rope finally snapped. No single apology was ever going to fix that. The fallout was deeper than fines and bans. It was emotional, cultural, institutional. Some players felt betrayed by the league's slow response. Others felt abandoned by their teammates. Some rookies were confused about who to trust. Others had lost all trust entirely. And through it all, the fans who just wanted to watch great basketball were forced to pick sides in a battle that never should have existed. In the weeks following the league's statement, one thing became clear. Brittney Griner would not be returning this season. Whether that's temporary or permanent, nobody knows. What is known, though, is this. Her silence has become her legacy's loudest chapter. The athlete who once stood at the center of a global political rescue, the one whose name was printed across headlines in 2 countries, the one who inspired millions with her strength, now exists in a cloud of unanswered questions and self-imposed exile. And Caitlin Clark? She continues to rise. She continues to represent the future. But even that future is complicated, because her name is now tethered to something bigger than basketball. And whether she ever speaks about it or not, the league's survival will be linked to how it handled her first year. The good, the bad, the controversial. She didn't ask to be a symbol, but she is one now. And as the WNBA tries to chart its next steps, Clark remains the most important player in its orbit. Not just for her skill, but for her presence, for her ability to remain composed when everything around her cracked. Fans are watching, sponsors are watching, the media is still circling, but the question remains, is the WNBA finally ready to lead itself? Or will this be remembered as the moment the league had everything it needed, talent, attention, cultural relevance, and failed to meet the moment? Whatever happens next, one thing is certain. Nothing will ever be the same again. Not for Brittney Griner, not for Caitlin Clark, and not for the WNBA.